my name's Anna. I'm the education director at the Holter Museum. Holter Museum is here in Helena. I see that we have quite a few people joining us from a couple areas. That's awesome. Yay. So the museum itself is a contemporary art museum. We have 5 exhibition spaces. We see some 22 contemporary pieces, galleries, exhibitions throughout the year, and we do education themed around those, but we also have a fairly robust education program of our own right. So we are in schools teaching. I actually am leaving this to go teach 3rd graders at one of our local elementary schools after this. And so as part of that, we have a collection of resources on our website for teaching artists and for community members, community partners, anyone who really is looking for an art lesson. The museum has those resources on our website. So I've pulled 2 of the lesson plans we actually do in the schools. One of these is based off of a partner organization we have here at the museum and work with. And the other is how I started my school residencies this year. And they're just wonderful. So the museum itself, we have all of our exhibitions online. If you're ever looking to kind of reference some of the contemporary art is here in Montana, or if you're looking to see some of the work that we do pull in from nationwide international artists as well. We just had an Italian artist come through somehow and end up in Helena, Montana, which was wonderful. It was such a great occasion. You can find those either through video tours or through access to images and artist statements on the website. And so we pull from those when we're making our lesson plans as well. I want to kind of get started with one of my favorite basic simples. I was not able to get a list of supplies out to Heather before this, so there's no stress if you do not have supplies with you. That's on me. This is one of my favorites because it involves a pencil and it involves a sheet of paper. And we do this, there's a couple versions. You can do 3 different activities using just these supplies. When I'm working with ages that are in elementary range, this is how I start, but I actually brought in some of the examples that my high schoolers and I made. So this is a version of this exact art activity we're going to do when we took an added color to it. That was produced by high schoolers. And then this is a version of it produced by a kindergarten class of mine. So it can go completely different ways. You can have ornate, beautiful images, and then you can just have creative freedom. And it's encouraging a little bit of play. It's really an art activity that's open to making mistakes and exploring them. I find that when I'm working with students, maybe the biggest emotion I am encountering in my classrooms is that whatever was going on in my brain has not translated to the piece of paper, and I'm really upset because that didn't work out and it's not what I wanted. And so this is a way of kind of encouraging those students to explore and to maybe make some mistakes with that artwork and see where it goes, and then look for shapes to figure out what they're doing. So a piece of paper and scrunching it up. This is maybe the part my students love the most. I always have them watch me before they do this, because if the second the paper's in front of them, they just want to do this. So as soon as you've scrunched it up, you need to carefully unfurl it. And this is where we talk about mistakes. If you've accidentally torn your paper, that's okay. Maybe it becomes a monster's mouth that you can mimic like a puppet, and it can kind of turn into a T-Rex drawing, and then you can draw skyscrapers on it, and it's a T-Rex attacking the sky. I drew a giant pizza attacking skyscrapers because I made a tear in one of my examples recently. So unfurl it carefully, and it has all of these lines that have been formed from the papers being scrunched, that texture that's formed. And we're going to go back over those lines with a pencil. For my example, I'm actually going to be using a black marker, so it's a little bit more visible for all of you, just because I know that on a video format might not translate to have pencil lines. But when I'm working with students, I am using a pencil for this. And we start with a graphite pencil. We're not using a color pencil. We're just kind of drawing. So if there's something we want to change, we can go back in and do that. So I actually have to grab a black marker, but I'm in my classroom, so I can grab a black marker. Which I have. Okay. All right, black marker in hand, crumpled paper in front of me. I talk to my students as I'm doing this about basic shapes. Almost every age level will be able to recognize basic shapes. We start with circles, we start with squares, and we start with triangles. From those three shapes, you can get almost any other drawing. So you can draw an ice cream cone, you can draw a skyscraper, you can draw a T-Rex. Those three primary basic shapes. When I'm introducing them in the classroom, I talk about the primary colors. Most of my students know red, yellow, and blue as the primary colors. When we talk about basic shapes, we use that same language of, with the basic shapes, you can build anything you want. With the primary colors, you can mix almost any color you want. What happens, the way I frame it is what happens when I stretch out a circle? It becomes an oval. So I get an oval from a circle. What happens when I stretch out a square? It becomes a rectangle. So I get a rectangle from a square. What happens if I put a square on its side? It becomes a diamond. That's wonderful. Look at all these shapes we got from just 3 shapes. And we start to look for basic shapes. So they've scrunched up their paper. They have all of these lines. I want them to find circles. I want them to find triangles. I want them to find squares. While they're looking for, I just found a square. I just looked at my piece and found a square. While they're looking for these, they're just doing the basic shapes. They're not going to end up with a picture like this yet. We're just doing basic shapes. So I'm going to go ahead and do some on my piece of paper here so that I can show you the next step of this. So I found a square or a diamond. I always find a ton of, when I do this around lunchtime, I always find a ton of triangles because I want nachos and I want chips. And so I'll say that to my students as I'm doing this is, oh, I found a ton of chips. I'm ready to eat nachos. Or like, did you have any kind of like chips and guac for lunch? Like, are you thinking about pizza? Are you thinking about ice cream cones? So keep going and finding those different shapes. So I found 4 so far. I've got a triangle over in this low corner. I've got a couple squares. This is a wonky square. The other thing I'm looking for are lines. I'm looking for really big lines that stand out to me. So this is a line right here that stands out. It's a little hard to translate the paper to the screen again, but it really stands out on the table when I have my paper down and I'm looking at it. That's like a mountain peak standing up. That's a pretty good collection of shapes right there. I see one more triangle that I'm going to do. Sorry. Thank you, Trent. We're in our classroom, there's staff walking through. So Trent just made a video appearance. So I found one more triangle down here. And I found one more right here. Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, so here's another triangle across from it. And immediately I'm going to look at this and from, let's see, I have 6 basic shapes on here. I'm going to start to look for drawings or ideas and images. Nachos with dip or guacamole or salsa comes up when you get a ton of triangles. I've found mini golf before, just finding things that the kids can relate to or connect to. They will love it. They will absolutely love it if you turn yours into a T-Rex attacking a city. That just almost always gets them. Or when I took it the next level and turned it into a giant pizza monster. I was in kindergarten class a week ago and found a Reuben sandwich that was a vampire with fangs. And we talked through what were the different parts of the sandwich and where I found the teeth. So I'm looking at this and I'm seeing from this angle or from this direction as I look at my paper, these 2 shapes here really strike me as like mountain tops, or they feel like they could be leading up to a bridge and there's a connecting line right here across between them that is the bridge that maybe a troll would live under. So kind of exploring that might be a really fun one, but then what does it mean these shapes up here are? Are they like falling objects? Are they in the sky above this bridge or above these mountains? Could one of them be the sun? Is another the moon if I have a sun? Maybe they're planets. Spaceships happen so often in here in this drawing. I love it so much, is you can easily make the entire night sky with a comet and all of these intergalactic spaceships that battle together. It's very fun. So that's from this angle. I'm going to change my paper to a new direction. I haven't committed to a drawing yet. I'm coming up with ideas. I'm brainstorming what I can see. So that means by shifting my paper just a little bit, I have an entirely new piece to work with. What do these remind me of if these shapes are up here? Well, it kind of makes me think I'm looking at a video game. That's where my brain goes, is I feel like that's like a spaceship again. And it's like the spaceships from maybe our childhoods that like you would shoot out little laser dots and it would be a little beep, 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 boo, that kind of game. And this is exactly how I talk to kids. So you're all experiencing it. This is how I'm narrating it for them. It's coming up with ideas that maybe they can connect with. So thinking, does that remind us of a spaceship launching lasers at a target? Okay, then the target has to be something down here. Is this the remnant of something that has exploded already? Man, get them to draw explosions. They're gonna love it. Or it could be something entirely different. I have a different idea. I love that. So I'm going to shift it again. And I've moved my paper now 2-3 times. I've looked at it from different angles, different perspectives. I'm moving that paper to come up with other ideas. I still haven't committed to one. I want to brainstorm 3 to 4 ideas. Once the kids get going, when you tell them initially, brainstorm 3 or 4 ideas, they're going to be like, what? No, that's too many. But once you get them going, they're going to see so many. So often more times it becomes 4 or 5. So I'm looking at this. And the reason I shifted it is because these shapes make me think of a mouth that is open and that is going to eat something or that is saying something. So that means here would be my upper lip or my nose. Here's my lower. Here's a tooth that is in my mouth. Maybe I just lost a tooth. That's really relatable for some of our kids. So they just had a tooth come out and they're going to put that under their pillow for the tooth fairy. Or maybe they're messy eaters and that's food coming out of their mouth, which means they might want to draw a napkin coming up to clean it. Whatever it may be, I'm looking at these shapes, trying to figure out how to make an image from them or a story from them. So I really like the idea of turning this into, I think I'm going to go with the bridge. I like the bridge. I like the idea of connecting because we're all connecting from across the state right now. So I'm going to build a bridge. And again, with your students using a graphite pencil or just a drawing pencil, a writing pencil for this, I'm going to be using my markers so that my lines are more visible. So I'm going to create my bridge and I'm going to start to bring this picture to life. Once you've found your drawing, you can now choose what you add to that drawing. It no longer has to be shapes or lines you see in this paper. You get to add to it. We found things. Now let's bring them to life. Let's add other basic shapes to them. So in this case, I'm just adding a line and I've made my bridge. And then I'm going to make a little troll that lives under the bridge. So I'm going to give my little square here 2 little horns up top, and I'm going to give it a body. And it's just going to be hanging out under the bridge, just waiting for someone to pass by and give it some ice cream or give it a sandwich, maybe to share a story with a friend. I love coming up with stories while I'm doing this. If the kids are having trouble coming up with a design, is we talk about what's going on in my picture and maybe what kind of story it could be and what our friendly troll is waiting for. Is he waiting for a friend to bring him some ice cream? I am too. So I've added basic shapes. God-free relaxed troll. It always, I mean, we probably all know this, it is so significant when you make art with the kids, when you're doing the activity. Anytime the museum is doing our school residency, we really encourage the teachers to be making alongside us because your kids want to see your talent too. And even if you don't feel creative, They think you are amazingly creative. This is not, I am an artist. This is not my best drawing by any means. I just made it in 30 seconds too. But my kids are gonna love it. And they're gonna have a lot more encouragement to come up with their own designs too, if they see me enjoying as well, and if I'm kind of bouncing back and forth with them. So I've made a troll, oh, and this is fun. You can always change your drawing. If you have a kid who likes to improvise, I could also have turned this into a little monster out camping. I could build a campfire and I could make this the night sky above him. But I'm still sticking with my original. This is a troll under a bridge. And I'm going to add triangles to my sun to make it look a little bit more like a sun. So I'm adding to my design. I think you all understand what happens from here and how you end up with the final picture is you just keep going. This could be a 45-minute activity. This could be 15 minutes. You can really get a final design out of it that ends up taking 2 hours if you add color to it, or you can keep it simple to just a line drawing like this. So I love this when I'm trying to get a student to feel creative. I think it's a very fun introduction into art. And if you're ever in a space of like, what do I want to do from here? So I tell my students that when I get artist block, this is one of the first things I do is that I create this kind of drawing to come up with something larger. Do I want to turn this into a final painting? Do I want to watercolor this? Do I want to turn it into a series of comics? These are good questions to come out of it. And you can take this small little seed and turn it into a much larger project if you want. Entirely up to you. I love this little lesson plan. It's one of my favorite things to do with kids when I'm trying to encourage creativity and to remind them that you don't have to be an artist to be creative, or everyone is an artist. Both are true. Whether or not everyone feels that way about themselves, that's very much one of the ways that we approach art making with the students. The next activity is a really fun one. So I want to lead this. This involves cardboard. We have a program. It was actually one of the first ways I started to learn how to teach art and then started to learn beyond that, originally came from Minnesota and has made its way to Montana. It's called Adventures in Cardboard Montana. And they do a lot of sword building and fantasy role play and then conflict resolution through that. We can't do sword play with everyone. Just gotta acknowledge that. So we do something else when we're working with some of our younger students or when we're working in spaces that don't want to get into the conflict resolution through the sword play. So we start with a cardboard box, just kind of like this. This is from the museum's recycling. Anything you have lying around. I love this activity because it really requires a cardboard box and then it requires markers or oil pastels, something that is going to give color to your box. And it also involves, just like the other activity had crumpling in it, this one has a little bit of tactile too. We're going to tear our box. It's a little hard with the younger kids. They might, I have taught this with kindergartners and they need a little bit of help, but they also had a lot of fun with it. The older kids, I mean, you're giving them permission to destroy something that is so enjoyable in its own right. And we're going to destroy parts of this box to make an art activity from it. So we're going to destroy something to make art. Again, when we make mistakes in our art and we have those big feels, we can make something beautiful from them. It's just that little reminder for students because that is the emotion that I feel I encounter in my classrooms the most. So I'm going to tear a chunk real quick. And this is going to become a mask. This is my face, or it could be a theater mask. It could be one of the muses. So it could be a happy face. It could be a sad face. If you want to just create art, this is such a fun mask making activity, but you can also turn this into a component where you're exploring emotions and how we express them. I'm just going to make the mask for now. And then once we finish this, talk through a little bit more some of those other ways that you can play with this activity. So you have one piece just like this that's meant to represent a face. It doesn't actually look like a face. My face isn't square. We talk a little bit about abstract art with this. When you are representing a form, it doesn't have to be perfectly like that form, I can have a square face. I'm just going to see what happens with it, how I can turn it into, like, what can I add to it to really impart that it is a face. So right now, it looks like a cardboard square. I have more cardboard next to me. That might be a little loud. My apologies if it records loud too. So what I'm doing right now is I'm ripping chunks of cardboard, and I'm going to rip these chunks and start to place them on my face to think about shape and composition. Is there a shape that really reminds me of an eye? Is there a shape that really reminds me of a mouth? Actually, this one really reminds me of a mouth, so that's perfect. This one could be an eye. I'm not so sure on it. I think I need to keep tearing. So that's what I'm going to do. I need, well, for me, I need 2 eyes. I need a mouth. I need a nose. If you really want to get into details with your students, you can add ears, you can add eyebrows, you can keep going. I add cheek components because I want to show that I have little cheeks. So you keep tearing. And this is the part that is so much fun, is yeah, giving students permission to destroy something. And they're looking, again, the shapes aren't perfect. This doesn't look exactly like anything on my face, but I'm trying to look at it and see, what does it remind me of? What can I turn it into? So I'm feeling a little bit smaller. Oh, perfect. I've got 2 square eyes, which I love so much. I have this. Okay, it's a nose. I found a nose. It's too perfect. It's easy to get enthusiastic about this art for me. I love it, but I really hope that that translates as you're working with students as well. Being able to kind of identify, like, what does that remind you of? And playing with the shape. I like to, when I'm leading this lesson, take different shapes and apply them to me, or to have them apply them to themselves to kind of figure out, does it feel like, so this shape, like this, feels like a frowny face. So if I was trying to express an emotion, I would go with this like this. But if I switch it, it's a smiley face. So maybe this could be a frowny face. Maybe this could be a smiley face. For me, this feels like a nose. It's just too perfect for a nose. So it's going to become my nose. So I place my shapes down like this, and I forgot this requires glue, but you can do it with a glue stick. Can't believe you forgot primary ingredient. It's colorful things, cardboard, and glue. And the colorful things, because cardboard is pretty cool on its own. It's my favorite material. We're going to be adding color to really make our eyes pop and our nose pop. And we're also not going to do colors that we would normally associate, just like this, my face isn't square. We're going to use colors that we wouldn't normally use for skin tone or for drawing our bodies. We're going to be using bold and bright colors so that it may not look exactly like me, but it's a face, and you can see that face and you get the impression of a face. It's a little bit of abstract art. I love it. So this shape feels like an open mouth that's saying, and that means, because that's how I feel, that's what I'm going to use for my mouth. So I've got my full face. I've got 2 eyes, I've got a nose, and I've got a mouth. And the next step to this is to glue it down onto your piece of cardboard. Kind of, if you want to get cubist with this, you can actually play with where you place these, similar to maybe Picasso's faces, where he would change the structure of the face and the components. An eye might be where the mouth is. Your nose might be where an eye is. I'm going to go with a traditional layout where my 2 eyes are on top, my nose is in the middle, my mouth is below it. Partially because this is one of the final lessons I've done after leading students through how to draw bodies using traditional proportions. So we've drawn bodies with traditional proportions. We're going to play with how to take those proportions and turn them into a little bit of an abstract art form. So at this point, you want to glue down your pieces. Once you've glued down those pieces, You've placed them, you've glued them down. You're going to use markers or you're going to use colored oil pastels. These are the materials that show up best on cardboard in my experience. Oil pastels pop on cardboard. It is so much fun. It's so pretty. So we have a giant teacher's pack here that I'm going to pull from. And again, I'm not using colors that are similar to any skin tone. I want to use colors that don't really feel real. They're bright. I want to use a blue maybe. I want to use a red, yellows, things that aren't going to, an actual artist would use to create veins and would use to layer paint. But with a kid, you're not going to say, we're putting down the blue first because we're drawing veins. No, I want colors that I'm going to use for my eyes, my nose, my lips that are going to pop. So I've selected, ooh, and purple. Ooh, I forgot that I had purple. Favorite color. So I have all of these really bright colors and I want to apply them. Again, I'm not trying to make this look like an actual face. So I just want to apply them on my cardboard and cover body parts in one color completely. So this can be a really fun activity to get into patterns with, where you talk about filling a space and then creating patterns on top. I've also done this with paint markers. Don't necessarily like doing this with paint markers, but students love paint markers. So it's a great opportunity for them to play with paint markers. But when we do paint markers or Sharpies, we talk about the strength of something that fills a space versus adding details. Paint versus paint marker. Paint is to fill a space. Paint markers are for details. So you would do outlines, you would do dots, you would go back over. Sharpies, very similar. You don't necessarily use Sharpies to fill a space. You use them to add details or to create lines. So with my oil pastels, I'm going to do both. I'm filling a space. Here's my purple nose, and I'm going to create patterns on it. So patterns, when I'm explaining this to students, we talk about basic shapes again. And then we talk about lines and what happens if I have a ton of circles all in the same space together. Those are dots. Okay, that's a pattern. We came up with a pattern. What happens if I cover this piece of cardboard in all of these lines, all going the same direction? I've created a pattern. I've created stripes. So we talk about basic patterns, about zigzags when we combine zigzags. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to think about some of those patterns and I'm going to cover my shapes in them. So I've filled my shapes. Here's my little nose. And I'm now going to do zigzags in a different color across my nose. And I'm trying to keep this simple to be aware of our time. So you can do every part of your face. You do not need to just do the nose. I'm doing the nose as my example. So I'm doing my nose filled in with purple and then zigzags across it and it becomes, it's kind of, do I like it? I don't know if I like it. Having those conversations with kids, that's great. Do they not like it? What's going to happen when they add it all together? Maybe they don't like it right now, like, oh, that green and that purple. Oh, and the zigzags. I think though, if I keep going, and if I try adding color to my eyes, if I try adding color to my mouth, I might end up liking this. I'm just gonna keep going. So here's my finished piece. Glued down to create my face. Again, it's an activity. I would say it needs more than 15 minutes. The other activity definitely can be done in 15, but this one I've done in 45 minutes to 2 hours. It can take up a chunk of time. You can really get into it. If you have a group of adults who are able to be helpful tearers and help tear the cardboard, then that's going to help the younger kids who you may have participating if you're teaching kind of kindergarten through first grade, I would say, with the motor skills for this. But it is so much fun to have that invite to tear and then to make something from what you've torn, and the value of being able to talk about and recognize emotions and how we portray emotions in what does a mouth look like? What kind of mouth is this going to be? So when I'm doing this, I can get into that. I don't have to get into it. if I am going to start talking about emotions with students and how they get portrayed in art, one of the things the museum does often is social emotional art. And I happen to be a social emotional art teacher. And so that means most of the time when I'm leading one of these lessons, we are talking about our emotion portrayal. What does it look like when we're really happy? What does it look like when we're really sad? Is an anxious mouth something that exists? Does that mouth make me feel anxious? What do my eyes look like when I'm really tired? I'm so tired. Maybe there are other body parts that come into that expression. So I play with the components. I play with the eyes. I play with the mouth. I don't really play with the nose that much when it comes to social emotional expression. Maybe you can. If you can, please let me know how you do that. I'm not sure what a happy nose looks like or a sad nose looks like, but we play with the expressions that we can create. And then once our masks are finished, we can actually go another level and we can put our masks on and talk about the emotion that we are portraying. And then are there is there body movement that would go with it? If you made an excited mouth, I made an excited mouth or a very hungry mouth. What are the body motions that go with those two? Hungry being a state of physical existence or being. I'm hungry. Okay, I might be rubbing my tummy. I need food. If I'm excited, I might have my hands in the air and just be waving them around like I don't care because I'm so excited and happy. Or I might even be very expressive with my hands. I might be jumping up. If I'm hungry, my shoulders might be a little bit more slumped because my body needs energy and I need food. So we start to get into how we can act out these emotions and how we can recognize them in others. What does happy look like for me versus happy for a friend who's made another happy mask? Is there a difference between how we portray that emotion? Hold on, there's a train of thought there because there's another, and then switching masks. If you know your mask, hopefully you've put your name on everything. I always forget that part and then I always have to track down which student made what. Hopefully your name is on the back of the mask. You've signed it bold and clear, legible. An artist always signs their artwork, unless you forget. But an artist should always sign their artwork. Trade masks with someone who's done a different emotion. Okay, if your body is showing happy, but your mask is showing anxious, can our bodies and our faces say different things? How do we kind of read into that? So that gets into a little bit more physical theater and how we express our emotions. It is such a fun activity. I really enjoy it. I tend to get into the emotions doing the mask trade. That's something that we would do in high school. In middle school, we'll act out the emotions, and upper elementary, we'll act out the emotions. In middle school, we really talk about sharing emotions between friends. What does one person's happiness look like? What does one person's sadness look like? Do you feel common traits with that? Does sadness look similar to you? Does it sometimes express the same? When we get into the younger elementary ages, we don't necessarily get into other emotions as much. We get into what does it feel like for us? What does mad look like? So playing through all of these, playing through the cardboard scraps, getting to express that, these are two of my favorite activities, especially because they're activities that really don't require too many supplies and they don't require too many specialty supplies. I hope most people have access to oil pastels or markers. Glue, tape can also be an alternative. The paper, I think most of us, I do this always with printer paper because I find it is the easiest to scrunch up. I use a graphite pencil when I'm doing it with my actual students. And then I like to use crayons and oil pastels to bring the color out, but you can do this with markers. You can do this with color pencils. The really cool thing as well is that you can still see all of your lines in this activity. So any kind of shape that you didn't end up using, it's there as well. So you get to think about your art making process. It's one of my favorite things as well to do with a group. So the cardboard masks I like doing as a group where each person makes their own masks. With these, I call it the scribble game or the scrunch game because there's a version of this you can do where you make scribbles everywhere. And with the scrunch game and the scribble game, I love being able to ask my friends for help. So is the person next to me, if I'm having trouble coming up with ideas, do they have some bright ideas? Do I see anything in theirs? And can I ask them to help me look at mine to maybe see if there's some other ideas? Yeah, those are my two activities I want to share with you all. I thought that was going to take a lot more time, and I'm realizing we have 20 more minutes in this time. I'm more than happy to talk about other art activities. These are really fun ones to do with a range of kids. I can't say that enough. Heather, is there anything you think I should add?
Oh, I think these are all amazing activities and very engaging, and just lucky that you're able to share them with us. Are there participants that would like to ask other questions or ask Anna why she's here, activities that they'd like to focus on with their students?
Ooh. Ooh.
Or share ideas that this might have sparked too?
Please.
Yeah, feel free to hop off of mute or. How many of you out there might pick up this activity and use it this next during this next few weeks or semester? I see some thumbs up. See some we will. Can't wait to try these.
Hello. So I was talking to Bethany about using the cardboard mask idea. Sorry, my dog's going. And so I like the tie into emotion, how we can show how we're feeling and then act out our emotions, to throw in a little theater and acting to get the kids going even more. So I thought that would be a cool idea and project to do, I guess.
Okay.
I loved those both, Anna. That was fabulous. Thank you. Here's my scrunchy art. I love to save paper bags, like, grocery bags, and crumple them up and have them make their own maps. And so I can totally see that this will kind of, like maybe make the shapes of the buildings or things and then create the map around it. But crumpled up trash or brown paper bags are so fun because they almost turn into like fabric. And so then we can like go on like adventures or when we were pirates or things. So this kind of reminded me of that. So anyways, thank you. I appreciate it.
I love that. I love the map component too. Yay. Hi, Miss Sue. Good to see you too. Pirates is fun. I've seen a lot of maps come out of this with our adventures in cardboard. We teach, so it's fantasy role play with cardboard swords, and we talk about building maps as well. So we have kids who will unfurl entire pieces of cardboard and turn them into just amazing like secret treasure hunts they want you to follow, where you're like, what am I actually going to find at the end of this? But I haven't actually done it with this, despite the amount of kids. We've made overhead, we call them bird's eye views, where you're looking as if you're a bird flying over the land. So I didn't think about adding trails to that, ironically enough, just making a flushed out landscape. And both of these are so much fun when it comes to kind of forms of expression. The maps is, we designed that with someone who is a physical theater dancer here in Helena with Cohesion. And she uses it when she's with her students, and then she does the physical body motion, which has been wonderful. Yay.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, are there any other questions or idea sourcing while we have Anna here with us? Feel free to join in. And we really appreciate your time. It's just sparking different ideas, and we're already having conversations with my staff like, oh, we need to bring her into our conference and build on all of these great resources that you guys have and that you do at your program.
Hi, Heather. This is Alicia from Lonas and Shelby.
Hi, Alicia.
Hi, I just want to say that this is so amazing on so many levels. I'm currently taking an art class at school, and we're talking about this chapter is form and shapes and composition and abstract, and that's amazing. And then the other cool thing is I'm coming to Helena in this weekend, actually, for a policy and advocacy leadership meeting, and I think we're visiting Holter Museum this weekend. So that's pretty exciting too. And so I can't wait to meet you if you're going to be there. And this is just great that this ties into, you know, exploring the emotions. And I have a 6-year-old and an 11-year-old, and she makes so much stuff out of cardboard. So I'm just so excited to introduce this to her and the other kids with the cardboard and the tearing, which will be great for the motor skills for the kids that have some disabilities. So this is just amazing. Thank you so much.
Yay. Happy to hear that. Enjoy your visit to the museum. We have some kind of incredible exhibits up right now.
I'm so excited. All the resources that you have online. So this is just so cool. Thank you.
Sweet. I wanted to add actually so the crunch game can be done in another way too. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with it, but I think it's a little bit more it's almost kind of like a meditative art space. So if you ever have someone who maybe is feeling a little bit anxious, or almost like adult coloring books or coloring books as a way to calm down or to be able to work through some emotions on your own, you can actually do the crunch game. It's called stained glass art. And you take and outline every single line that you make on your piece of paper. So I'm just doing this on the back of mine. And I'm just going back over it. This you will want to do with a pen or a marker, just because you want the black to stand out against the color a little bit more. So going back over every single line, and what you're doing is creating spaces that you're going to fill with color. When I have one teaching artist in the schools who uses this to teach the primary colors. I'm not sure how he does it. I haven't witnessed it, and even in his lesson plan, I'm like, wow, that's really skilled. But he somehow has you choose primary colors and put them separate of each other, and then where the space is in between. So this would be yellow here, this would be red here, and then they would mix in here and become orange. It's very impressive. When I'm doing this, I am just filling in. I'm choosing colors that I find are really pretty, and I do this with colored pencil often. Otherwise, I'm doing this with marker, just because they have a little bit of a finer tip, and so it's easier to get into all of those spots. But I'm filling in each one with colors that I really like, and in the end, it's going to look like stained glass. And it's something that, yeah, when you have a student who needs to chill out, or when you have a student who's really good at quiet focus time, it's a good activity to do stained glass with them. Just one piece of crumpled paper can go 2 ways. It can be fine shapes, it can be do stained glass. I was just thinking of that, and I completely spaced that one. Yeah.
That's an awesome one. I might have to try that one right after this session today.
It was a really fun one.
Mhm.
It's great.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining. I'm excited that we were asked to be able to participate, and I love being in my classroom space. I hope you can feel how colorful our artwork here is, and just how much we get to create in this space. And these are lessons that are my kind of go-to, as in I know them, I pull them out when I'm meeting a group and I'm trying to figure out what that group will need, because this also lets me really measure where students are. Are they having trouble coming up with the ideas for the basic shapes? What kind of social emotional expression do they have? Is it something we're going to be working on as we continue to work together? They're just really fun. So I really appreciate being able to come in with you all. Thank you, Heather.
No, we really appreciate your time too, Anna, and sharing expertise today. And we hope to share more of your resources and collective activities from the Holter too. As we're wrapping up, I'm just going to highlight a few of our other upcoming events. We have a virtual conference, and I'll send out, if Anna has any additional links or resources, I will send those out in a follow-up email so you have access to them, and the links that I might be mentioning too. But we have an upcoming STEM virtual conference in March, and registration is open for that. It's a free event, and we'll have 2 days, multiple sessions with panelists from at least 6 different states across the nation highlighting STEM activities. So it'll be a neat gathering of STEM resources. We also have our in-person conference for the Montana After School Alliance happening in April, and registration is open for that. And we're pulling in great session presenters from across the state. So we'll be sharing those with you guys shortly, and hopefully incorporating resources like Anna's here, but in person, so we could get out all the materials and experience that together. And we won't be having a Winter Wonder Series next week, but we'll be having it the week after, and it will be Museum of the Rockies will be joining us. So then with that, everyone, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to drop some of those links in the chat, and if you have a moment, take the survey. It's always great to hear feedback on this opportunity of bringing in Montana-based resources and programs to share with our site providers. So thank you again, Anna. We really appreciated having you. And if there are any questions, feel free to send them to me, and I'll include all of Anna's resources later today in an email. So thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate you spending your time with us this morning.